Hello, everyone. Welcome to XDS per sessions. Thank you for joining this again. I saw many new guys, new person, and new friends, and some old friends. Thank you for joining. And today, this is our topic. We have the topic is about Spring using Spring or Spring security. So I will talk at least uh, according to the outline. You can see there are three main points. One is using Spring Bean with ZK, and the second one is using Spring security with ZK, and third one is the start ZK Spring Boot starter. Okay. So this is our today's outline, and so let's get to it. And the first one, okay, using Spring Bean with ZK. This doesn't mean you have to use ZK Spring. There's a ZK Spring module, but we are talking about just using Spring and ZK. So if you want to check, there's actually a document about this. You can check our development reference, and there's a section called integration, and there's a section about Spring. So what I talk about today is you can find the details in this part in this document. So you can check the detail later. So I will show you some example code quickly to demonstrate some idea. So let's start from the very simple one. It's just usually we'll have a common requirement is you want to access a Spring Bean in your page. So first you need to include. This is the example project. You can check it in the GitHub. So if you can see here, there is a GitHub. Sorry, copy the link. You can check the GitHub project in under the zcos, and there's a GitHub project repository called ZK Books. And in the ZK Books, there are many example projects. Actually, all the example projects of our ZK Books, no matter it's component reference, developer reference, AVM reference, all the example codes are here. So you can click inside the developer reference and you can see there is an integration Spring. So because it's under the integration section and about Spring. So you can check out this project to get all the source code I introduced today. So here let's show you, this is the project I get it from the GitHub. So you can see here. So to use the Spring in your ZK project, first step you have a ZK, and usually you will have to include the minimum is a Spring Web or Spring Context. Then you might include other Spring, but this is the minimal. And today I will show you with the Spring 5, but I think for the example I show you is no different between Spring 5 or 6. Yeah, because we just use the very core feature of Spring. So there's no difference between Spring 5 or Spring 6. So no matter you use Java EE or Jakarta EE, that's almost the same. Just the difference, what you include is the ZK 1010 or 1010-Jakarta. If you're using Jakarta EE, then you need to use this Jakarta here. So, okay, so that's the only difference, but all the code the same. So after you include this to Spring or your Spring dependency, you need to include this we call ZK Plus. It's kind of integration. It contains some kind of some utility methods, utility class or helper class for other frameworks. So you need to include the ZK Plus. And then second, you need to put this kind of a variable resolver in your page. So that's what we call the variable resolver is here. Z calls ZK plus Spring. So it means it's inside ZK plus. and it's called delegating variable resolver. That means you will resolve your variables in your Zool and turn it into a Spring Bean. So that's what it does. So if you want to access the Spring Bean in your Zool, remember to put this in your Zool. So let's check the first example here. So you can see here, I need to put the variable resolver here in the page. And now when I using a variable here in EO expressions, you will try to access, try to look for if it's a if there's a Spring Bean called this name or this ID. If there is, then we'll resolve it as a Spring Bean. So we have there's a prototype bean or request bean or user preference bean, is a session scope bean, or is a singleton. So here, if we do this, then it will correctly access the bean. So we can check the page bean scope, refresh here. You can see there's a prototype bean. I make the hash code on purpose. Display the hash code is to show that uh, their scope. So every time if I refresh this page, you can see the prototype bean and request bean will change. They actually resolve into a new bean. But the user preference is a session scope bean, so it doesn't change if you are in the same session. If I refresh this page, you can see, okay, this one changed, and this doesn't change. And this also doesn't change because it's a singleton. So just give you some idea, or if I can try to replace the bean or resolve again, to resolve another section bean again, but since we are in the same section, so I always get the same section bean. So unless here is the session bean, his hash code is 641, unless I open another browser and visit the same page, and you can see the session bean is different, it's 104. But the system configuration being I use a singleton, so it's the same, A65. So if you can check here, it's also A65. Okay. So this is just a very simple example to just demonstrate the idea. So where is the bean? He's actually here. I can check here. I put this bean here. It's a prototype bean, and his name is prototype bean. So when you want to access the bean, remember that you can declare as a component, and its default bean ID is the class name, but the first letter is lowercase. So prototype bean, its bean ID is also prototype bean, but the first letter is P. Okay, it's letter, lowercase p. So you can see the request bean, the same rule applies. There's a request bean or system configuration bean, but it's singleton by default, so I don't have to specify the scope. But here I have to specify the scope. It's request, or it's a prototype, or it's a session. So here I just create this bean in our project, and I can use it reference in our Zool. Very simple with this resolver and EO expressions. Okay, so this is the first simple case. So I think to make a class as a being is a Spring related configuration. So I don't mention too much, but I think there are many ways, but the most simplest way is just use some kind of component scan and specify a base package. But now you might using some Java annotation. That's the same way. So you can use this is the XML way, which is the old way is still support, but you can use Java way or XML way. It's no difference. So we can specify a base package like this. So then the Spring will scan all the class under this package here under this package to specify if there's any annotation, add component and turn it into a bean, register it as a bean. So this is the example show you about the using as a Spring Bean in Azure. And second case is very common case is I think most of you just want to wire the Spring Bean in the composer or in the view model, or we call controller. So in ZK, there are two kind of controller. One is composer using in MVC pattern, and one is view model using in NVBN patterns. So you might want to wire your Spring Bean. For example, your composer might want to a service bean to search, and you have a search service or you have a authentication service. So you want to wire your Spring service bean into your composer or into your view model. That's the common requirements. So actually, doing this in ZK is quite simple, but there are actually two approaches. You can choose one. So this is a raw page. So either you choose to use to turn your composer. The top is the first approach and there's the second approach. You can choose either one. They serve the same purpose. Just I think the preference is different. So it depends on your preference, but both have the same function, the same feature. So the first approach, if you can turn your composer or view model into a Spring Bean. So you can see I turn it into a green ellipsis. Yeah, so it's a green circle, means it's a Spring Bean, it's a Spring Bean. So you can turn it into a Spring Bean and register Spring Bean, register your composer or view model as a Spring Bean, then you can use auto wire to wire another Spring Bean. Maybe it's a service bean or authentication service or query service. And your service bean can also wire another, maybe your Hibernate persistent bean, something like this. Okay, so this is the first approach. And then you also need to use delegating variable resolver, just what I introduced in the previously here. So you will try to resolve your variable into a Spring Bean. So you can use a Spring Bean, find your Spring Bean, your composer Spring Bean. So this is the first approach. And the second approach is you don't turn your composer or view model into a Spring Bean. You just use it as a normal ZK composer or view model. ZK will manage the lifecycle for you. But inside this composer, you will use a ZK provided called wire variable. And this variable also rely on this wire variable also rely on variable resolver to resolve your variable in your composer into a Spring Bean. So you also look a Spring Bean for you and inject into your composer. So also serve the same purpose to inject or wire a Spring Bean into your composer. There are two ways, the first way and second way. So there's a simple comparison here. So first way is here, you use Spring auto wire. So this is the Spring, you turn your composer into a Spring managed bean. And so you use Spring Bean registration, you need to turn it. And so you can inject beans with Spring's auto wire. So you rely on Spring's mechanism to inject beans together. So it's actually a Spring Bean manager composer. And second way is you don't turn your controller into Spring Bean. You use DK manager controller. So you need to use the variable resolver so you can inject based on bean ID. And so any ZK component or view model can use it. Okay, so let's see some examples. Maybe it's too vague. Let's first start from MVC is relatively simple. So first one, this is the MVC example. Okay, let's minimize it. MVC here, auto wire MVC. So this is just a order springs. So I just make the application logic quite simple because this is not the point. So you can see here, we put this delegating variable resolver. And when I apply composer, I didn't just specify its a full qualified name. The old way or ZK traditional way, usually you will specify full qualified name like FOO, my composer. This is the traditional or standard way to apply a composer. But now we don't do this. Instead of using its qualified class name, I specify a variables. And this variable is actually a bean name. And its bean is inside here. You can see it's older bean composer here. So you can see it's older bean composer declares a prototype. So actually, this is a controller. This is a spring. You can see it's a spring rotation, not zk rotation. So it will turn this composer as a spring bean. So zk doesn't create object for this composer. Actually, it's a spring to create this composer, to create the object of this composer. So so now this composer is managed by spring context, not by zk. Uh, so if I want to apply this composer into this to this component, I cannot specify what's this like because the reference was older beam composer. I cannot do this. Uh, this way is also managed by zk. So instead of using this, I need to specify the bin ID. So this resolver will resolve this, and will look for this bin ID into Spring context, and finally will found this bin and apply it to my composer. And if I want to inject or wire the service like this is uh, order service. Assume this is another Spring Bean. Yeah, you can see this is another service. So it will here order service here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, order service here. So it's a service is singleton because there is no state. So I also wire another DAO data access object. So you can see here. So the Spring will inject order DL into a order service, and the Spring will also inject order service into our composer. So it's totally made by Spring because I specify order wire. So this is rely on Spring's order wire. So this is the first way I mentioned here. It's the first approach. You turn your composer into order wire, into a Spring bean and rely on order wire, which is the Spring mechanism to inject the beans and then finally apply it on this rule. So this is the first case. And VVN is very similar. If you want to use MVVN view models, you can see here, we also have to put a delegating value resolver, and we need to turn our view model, which is called here order VN, order being VN. Okay, so I make, for example, I make the bean name here. So I turn this into a Spring bean, and I use order wire here. So the Spring will wire this order service for me. So here, when I apply these view models on my components, I cannot specify a full qualified class name. So I have to specify a variable name here, which is the bean name. So you can see it's order bean VM, which match the bean ID here. Okay, so you can see there's no single quote. The single quote means it's a string literature. So here it's not the single quote. So maybe we can compare with the wire variable. So this is the first approach. You need to, so you can see if we make it round out YVVN here. So it actually give me some data here. So just a fake data. Okay, as a Spring bean. So this is the first, the first wave, first approach. And the second approach is to use Spring. We still use the getting resolver, but we don't turn our composer into a Spring bean. So you can see here, we applied it with a full qualified class name, as we call order composer. We use the full name here. We don't specify a bin ID. And I put a variable resolver here, or you can put it in the rule that has the same way. So here I don't use order wire. I use wire variables and call order service. By default, you will look for order service. So now here you will also inject zk. So they will rely on this delegating variable resolver. It will inject wire the variables for you. So it's rely on zk's mechanism, not by Spring. But Spring's this is also a Spring bean. So the Spring will also create this bean. And but the the it's rely on variable resolver to look for this bean and inject into your composer. Okay, so this is the a different way, but has a similar. You can see it's a similar way in MVC variable resolver. So it also work. You can make sure this these beans contain something. So it's not null. And so the MVVM is very similar. So you can see in MVVM, when you init a view model, you have to specify a full qualified class name. So I don't specify a bin ID here. And but inside this order VM, I need to put the in this page, I need to put the variable resolver. So the resolver here, the VM will also rely on resolver. And here you can see, you can wire the variable. And this variable actually is also a Spring Bean order service. It's also a Spring Bean. If you see here, it's the same this service. So here is in here. So you can see in MVVM way, you still can wire order service, which is also a Spring Bean with wire variable. It's a zk annotation. You can check the zk annotation, not Spring annotation. Okay, so this is the way that the second way you can do it. Okay, so a summary here. So there are two approaches. Either you turn your composer or view model into Spring Bean, or you just use zk's traditional way, standard way to apply a composer or view model, but still resolve a Spring Bean or wire Spring Bean with variable resolver. So both are serve the same purpose, and I think both work. Okay. So this is about wiring Spring Bean. But there's still a case, sometimes, not very often, but sometimes you might need to get the Spring Bean programmatically by Java API. So we provide the ZK plus, also provide a utility class here. So for example, there is a bean you will get a bean and item service bean and show the item numbers here. Okay. So this page is quite simple. Just print a number of items from the Spring Bean. So let's check the get bean composer here. So it's very simple. Just try to get the bean by using this Spring util. It's inside the DK plus. So you can get bean by its bean ID, and because we all have a order service bean, so you can get an order service, and you can call it to get the size and set the label. So this is just tell you that there is a way if you really need a dynamic way, not just rely on the wire variable or order wire. Sometimes you need to get the bean dynamically. You can call this API to get the bean. Okay, so that's the manual way to get the Spring Bean. Okay, so this is another example. So we already talked about this topic about the Spring Bean with DK. So if you want to see the detail, you can check this document in the integration middleware layer, Spring. Yeah, we mentioned all this detail here. Okay, let's go into the second topic. The second topic is about the using Spring Security with ZK. So also there's a project in a GitHub inside the ZK Spring. And the ZK Spring inside there's a ZK Spring Essential, and there's an example project called ZK Spring Core Security. And all the code I use today is here. So you can see it will show, give you some, this is just an example application. So you will show several use case. Maybe some are related to you can base on this to modify it and override it to your case. Okay, let's talk about the first case. The first topic is to, I think when you apply a Spring Security, you first is to choose how to build your login page. Actually, there are two ways. First, you can build your login page with Zool page. And second, you might choose to build your login page with other technologies, non-Zool technology. I mean, maybe JSP, HTML, theme like Leaf, or anything, any template engine. And you might still use Zool page in your application. Yeah. So I assume that you are building a ZK application. Yeah, this is a ZK application, but the difference is, do you build your login page with Zool or with other technology? So there are two different cases, and this will affect how you configure your Spring configurations. So let's give you an overview. If you build your Zool login page with Zool, then you need to face a problem is in order to make the ZK or ZK component works, you need to allot. There's a ZK resource engine you need to configure. So ZK can get the resource, that's static resource like CSS, JavaScript, or images through another channels. Because traditionally in old version, since this resource engines start from ZK 9.5. So before 9.5, there's ZK always gets resource, do anything, communication, do every communication through this ZKAU. There's only one channels. So if you build your login page with Zool, then you have to grant anonymous access to ZKAU because everything ZK it get static resource through ZKAU. So if you block this, because the login page means user does not log in. If he needs to visit the login page, means he doesn't log in, then it's not authenticated. So means doesn't have any permissions. So that means you need to grant some anonymous permissions for this. So ZK will try to get static resource when you try to render this UL page. And if you block these two channels, then ZK cannot get any static resource like CSS or JavaScript. So the ZUL cannot render correctly. So that will fail. So you cannot block all these channels in Spring Security. So at least you need to allot anonymous access for ZK RES. So you need to configure the resource engine, ZK resource engine. Then ZK will retrieve the static resource through this channel instead of through this ZKAU. And so you will keep your ZKAU under protected by Spring Security. You will grant it as maybe a user or any permissions. So to make sure everyone, if he's fire a ZKAU, he must be an authenticated user. Okay. So if you build your login page with Zool, then you need to configure REST engine, resource engine, so he can get static resource from another channel, so he can render correctly. And you need to submit your authentication request with phone submission instead of rely on event listener. So this is requires some extra configurations in Spring Security. And another way is you might choose to build your login page with non-ZK technology, maybe HTML, everything, then this part is not related to ZK. So you can make exception for this, no matter what kind of static resource you require, you can just configure for this page. Since this is not ZK, so I don't talk too much. It's because it's case by case, depending on how you design your page. And but this case is in this part is relatively simple because the login page is not ZK, so you can make sure that everything. I assume other ZUL page are under protections, so you don't need to grant any anonymous access to ZK related URL. So the ZKAU or ZKRES, no matter which request is, it will only fire this request after user login. So everything is under protections. So you don't need to do some extra configurations. So there are two cases. So there are simple comparison here. We can choose. So the first is you build your login page with Zool and some form submissions. So you need to configure some anonymous access to zkRES, and also need to permit ZK desktop remove request. This is a special request because every time ZK leave a Zool page, when he visit another Zool page, we'll try to fire a desktop removal request to the server to tell the server, okay, this desktop is already removed. So this request will also, you need to permit to grant anonymous access because your login page is made by Zool, and leaving that Zool will also fire this desktop removal request. So if you block this request, they will also have some problems. So you need to allow this special request. So, but this will have some benefits, yeah, because if you implement your login page with ZK, so you will keep your consistent UI scene with other parts, because I think most of your page are implemented by Zool, and you also implement your login page with Zool, so they will look the same. They will look consistent style. But if you implement in non-Zool, then maybe you need to require some more additional CSS work. For example, if your system has a very customized CSS scene, it's totally different from ZK. I think you have your own ZK, your own CSS set or CSS files, and it's maybe not a problem. You can easily create a consistent style login page with HTML or JSP or anything. So maybe you could choose this. And so this will no need to allow any anonymous access to ZK related URL because your login page is totally not ZK related. Okay, so this is the two main approach you can choose. So first, I will introduce you about some security configuration config. Okay, so I assume you build your login page with Zool. Okay. Okay, let's check another example here. It's security core here. Okay. Okay, let's check this example by explaining the config. So this is the config. You need to apply it when you build your Zool page, build your login page with Zool. And this is the typical way to apply your security config in Java way. This is based on the Spring 6. Okay. So this is based on Spring, but if you use Spring 5, it's very similar, but the coding style is a little bit different because now in Spring 6 they encourage this kind of coding style, and this API has a little bit changed. So I migrated from Spring 5 to Spring 6 based on this URL. So you can check this. And the first one is there's no different if you no matter use DK which version don't which DK version you have to disable Spring CSRF token because DK doesn't support it. If you use it, it will cause some problem. But DK will have its own CSR protections. So you can check this document. This will give you some explanation. Actually, DK also generates some kind of token, unique token. We use kind of the desktop ID as a CSR tokens. So every time when we send a DK request, we will send this desktop ID, and it will refresh. It will generate every time when you refresh the page. So every page, every time when you refresh the page, you will generate a new desktop ID. So it serves like and every request will attach this desktop ID. So it serves like a CSR token. So you have to disable it because DK doesn't send the Spring's CSR token. And the second is this one. As I say, if you build a login page in Zool, then you need to grant some anonymous access to zkRES. This is a resource engine. And the resource engine is not declared by default. So you need to declare your resource engine here. You need to declare resource engine in WebEx here, DM resource servlet. It actually is called, it's a servlet to handle the URL patterns. So this is what I call resource engine because it handles requests to get the resource. And so you have to allow it. So we call permit all. That means it doesn't require authentications. So every request here, no need authentication. And also, this is what we call the desktop remove request. The desktop you also need to permit it. You cannot block it or it will cause some problems. So this time, it actually is a measure. Then you will check the parameters. If it's a remove desktop, RM desktop, then you will pass. It doesn't block it. Okay, so this is the two extra ZK related setting you need to config if you build your login page with Zool. So you noticed. And the rest is just application specific. So it's not, you don't have to do it because it's just a setting for this example application. I think your will be different. So just for reference, you don't need to, you can ignore it because this is my login. You might have a different login or you might have a different thing. So the following are very application specific. You might have different permissions. So you don't have to check this, just focus on this part. Okay, then this will be the most important part. And the rest is just about this is also application specific. And this is a little bit DK related. If you are using some kind of when you use DK, sometimes when someone access a page without authentication, then you will send a 302 for someone. If it's send AJAX without authentication, you will send 302. But actually, the DK AJAX cannot handle 302. It's a redirect. So correctly, so you have to turn it to 403. And here is the way the configuration you turn to 403. And then if you turn to 403, then it will become an arrow. Then the arrow, that means user doesn't have doesn't authenticate. So you can configure here in zkXML here, client config, to handle the 403, this arrow code and redirect, reload it to login page. Because it's the 302 is happen when someone fired AJAX without authentication. Maybe it's a session expired or something happens, then it will receive a 02 from the Spring. So in that moment, you need to turn it here. So there's actually a detailed explanation. I will not mention too much here. But if you can check here is the forward and redirect. There are many cases. Oh, sorry, it's not this one. It's 302. Oh, here it's SSO redirect handling. This is also including sometimes if you using some SSO, you might also get this kind of problem. So here we mentioned different kind of uh, case, but they all have the same situation is you will get 302 redirect when someone fire Ajax, but actually the Ajax cannot handle the 302 correctly. So this because the 302 will directly visit a page, and a page will become response HTML, and ZK Ajax cannot handle an HTML. It should handle a JSON format because it's expected JSON format. So we need to turn the 302 into another arrow so ZK can know, okay, this is the arrow, we need to reload it. So in Spring, I will use this setting to turn the 302 to 43, and then use the arrow handling here to make the user to reload to the login page. So you will, if the user doesn't section expire or it doesn't authenticate correctly and fire address request, then it will correctly be redirected to login page. Okay, so this is the way you can handle. You can configure the Spring security. So this example is quite simple. Where's my example? Okay. So just also, if you don't access, if you want to access a secure page, then it will just redirect you to a login page here. So you can log in, for example, with this username and this password, and log in, and so you can go to the secure page. Okay. So, and in this page, there is actually the Spring Security. We have a module called ZK Spring Security. That's the extra add-on. You can see here. It's not Spring. It's ZK's. ZK's add-on is ZK Spring Security. It provides some simple page control to control the visibility of a page. For example, here we have a tag here. You can declare a tag, and the tag has a method to check if it's a supervisor. If it's a supervisor, you will see this message. You are a supervisor. Okay, so you can see you are not a supervisor. So you can see here, you are a supervisor because I log in with a supervisor with ROD. Okay, so my raw is a supervisor, so I can see this line. If I log out and I try to log in with another, for example, just using a Peter. Peter, if I log in with a Peter, it's just a user. And I check this secure page, you can see you will see you are not a supervisor, so you cannot see the extreme secure page. So here we have a tag library to you can use the tag library to control the visibility of this page. So you can choose to show or hide some part of this page, and so there are actually not just this, they have other methods. You can choose to to use. For example, here, you can choose to check the disk document zkSpring Essential, and here, add security in the view layer. And inside here would tell you how to use the tag library in the page. And actually we provide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, four methods, or four methods to help you to check the permission. So it's all grant or any grant is to check if this person does it have the specific role? For example, is a supervisor or is a user something? So you can choose to display uh, which part of the page. Or it's also provide a security an API, so you can check in the Java code and to determine whether to create a button or not, or create some part. So it's also a utility you can use to control your permissions. Okay, so this is the part we talk about in the secure in the view layer. Okay, let's go through the last part is to using the starter. And the Spring Starter, we have several demo projects in the GitHub here. So you can check there's a zcos, zk Spring Boot, and this is the Spring Boot project. And under there's a Spring Boot demo. And under Spring Boot demo, there actually have many demo projects. It serve different purpose. I will introduce some of them today. So here we first introduce the jar packaging because they are when using Spring Boot, you can choose whether to use jar or var packaging. In this case, Spring Boot Starter is actually another add-on to help you quickly use Spring Boot. So if you want to check this document, you can check here. There's a installation guide Spring Boot. So here we have a document about this. I tell you all about how to use the Spring Boot with zk Spring Boot Starter. So this is the Spring Boot Starter. Let's see the first simple example is the minimal jar packaging. So the way you use it is quite simple. You can just include this zk Spring Boot Starter, and that's all. So here we check this. We check the dependency here, demo Spring Boot minimal jar. So you can see we just need to include the Spring Boot Starter, for example, 3.2.7, and it will include Spring Boot for you, same version. So the version number, we use the same version as Spring Boot Starter. So you can see the zk Spring Boot Starter 3.2.7. It includes the same version of Spring Boot Starter. Okay, it's a bit yeah, confused, but yeah, it's the same version. Okay, zk Spring Boot, and so you also include zk for you. So you can see it will include a zk default version for you. But if you don't want, you can override it in POM. So actually, in this project, because we want to show the minimal configuration, so here it just include the only one starter project, starter dependency, and everything is ready. If you want just start very quick, then this is just what you want. You can start very quick, and let's try it. To start, so you can start here by using. There are many ways to start it. The first way is to use the Maven plugin, Spring Boot runs, and you can run it. So okay, started. So it's very quick. So let's visit in here. So it's just have a very simple page because this project is just to demonstrate the minimal setup. So it's just very small. Okay. So the first setup is quite simple. You need to use Spring Boot 3.2.7, and it will include, I think it's include the Spring 6. Okay, so starting from Spring 6, you have to use Jakarta. Yeah, this is the Spring's spec. Spring 5, you still can use Java EE, but Spring 6, it completely switched to Jakarta, so you have to use ZK Jakarta, or it doesn't run. So yeah, and I think the JDK you have to use 17s. Okay, so this is the first case I want to demo is to the POM file. It was include ZK by default, and okay, and there's a view resolver. Okay, so when using jar packaging, there is a major difference is there's no web app folder. So you can see uh, by WAR packaging here, let's compare here. By WAR packaging, you can see src man, there's a web app folder. So you put your Zuo here. But in jar packaging, there's no web app and there's no web XML. Okay, so the place you put your Zuo is quite different. You need to put it under web. On the web. But in our example, we'll put it on the web Zuo. That's because we have a specify uh, the path here. Okay, so because we specify path here, we want to make it put all our Zuo into a Zuo folder, but it's not necessary. You can put it under web. That's fine. You don't have to put it on the Zuo. But that's the example. So here you can see we have a home page. So in the home page means if we visit the root path, then we will visit this page. We will visit this path, which is the Zuo minimal. And the Zuo minimal actually is under resource web. So let's check the configuration. It will have some explain here. Okay, so this is the main difference if you want to use jar packaging. You need to deal with this path problem. Not the problem, but actually the path issue. So you can see if you enable, this is enabled by default. If you enable this Zuo view resolver, so here it has an explanation tell you say, if you use jar packaging, then its base for the root folder is under here, source main resource web. So it doesn't like if you use WAR packaging. If you use WAR packaging, then everything is the same like you use the traditional web application. Yeah, it's a standard Java application. It just put your page and you will, when you visit a page, you will be under web app. But if you use Java packaging, you must be aware that it's different. It's under this patch, under this path. So that's because we register internal view resolver, and this internal view resolver will look for this path. Then why this path? Because this path is a DK's web class path, web resource path here. If you check this source, check the document, you can see this is a classical a ZK spec. Then ZK will treat this path as very special path. So it's under, actually it's under here. So you will, if you build your file into a jar, that will under here. Yeah, and if you build your application into a WAR file, then it will, this path will be here. Okay. So actually, this is a class path, then ZK will look for. So this is why we put this as a default path. This our internal view resolver will look for this path. So you can see here, if we choose to build a minimal job packaging, you can see we always put our rule under this web source main resource web folder. So this is the first things, big difference you need to notice. There is a internal view resolver. Okay, and another one is if we, so because of this path issue or path difference, let's check another demo chart. If you want to include a page, then will be different. Okay, so here there's another case. So we put our view resolver prefix as /rule. That means it will always look our page or rule page into web/rule here. So if we visit this home page as demo, so it means you will look for the demo. Okay. So let's see our configuration. No, is this? Oh no, not this one. Okay, this one. So if we visit here, okay, now it becomes you visit this page. Which page? Home page is demo. Okay, is this demo? Okay, so this is demo. So it's by default, if we visit the root path, you will visit this page as demo. And if you want to include, for example, there's a MVVN, oh, sorry, no, this is resource. If you want to include a page, uh, include a page here, where's the include? Oh, okay, no, it's here. If you want to include a page, for example, here you need to use, it's better we suggest you use this tail dot slash, because the tail dot slash, this refer to the ClassPass web resource folder, which is here, is web here. So you can see tail dot slash means this part, this page, this path, and the Zool, it means here. So MVVM page 1 means this one and this one. So if you want to include, you cannot just use a standard way, a standard path like you use you use in specifying WA package because its path is totally different. So the first we suggest to use, you need to start your path like this. Use tail dot slash, and you should check here. So in this case, you can see we use MVPN. If you visit this page, this subpage 1, subpage 2, this two button actually switch to between these two rules. So this is the page issue you need to notice when you use job packaging. You need to include this. When you want to include a page, you need to use the path starting with tail dot slash. And if you want to include some static resource, they also be a little bit different. So there are two approaches. Actually, first approach, if you use a slash, a direct slash CSS, then you need to notice that this is, because there's no web app. So actually, the Spring's default static content is a folder called static. Okay, you can check document here. So here, the CSS means the under the static folder CSS. So there's a static local style here. The first approach is you put your static resource under this static folder and you include it by directly using this slash, the absolute path, but the absolute path actually here, we refer to the path on the static. So if we visit this page, resource, you can see it load CSS correctly. You can see there's a global style, web style. So this is, oh no, static or local style here. So you can see it loads correctly. So this is the first way, the first place you can load is using loading a resource from default Spring Boot static content. And the second place is what I mentioned before, is using the zk static class path web resource path here. It is tail dot slash here. So if you put you specify a path like this, you can see the actual path is here. Okay, web local style. So you need to put your file under resource web CSS or image. Okay, so there are two paths you can load it. So depend on your preference, you can either be the static or be under the web. Okay, so this is the two places. So in job packaging, remember you need to deal with these path differences. And web packaging is relative simple because everything is just the same. Like you don't use the Spring Boot before. So if we run okay, let's see, if we run the minimal var here, run minimal var here, so we can see everything just the same. There's no big difference. No big difference. You put it your page, and there's a web info. You have a web XML. You can put zk XML. Everything is the same as usual. And if you want to wiring bin here, someone might also interest. It's actually the same as we already mentioned. You also put delegating the resolver here in a page, and you try to apply a composer by using a bin ID instead of specify the full qualified class name. Okay, so this is actually the same. No matter you use the traditional Spring, or if you want to use Spring Boot is the same. The usage is the same. So I don't put too many examples. The more example, you can just check the previous example in developer reference integration Spring. So here I just put an example to tell you, okay, it works. Demonstrate here. Example wiring Spring Bean doing service. So in here, there's a my compose. The my compose is here, and is a Spring Bean in the wire Spring Bean, and the service is here. So my service is also another bean. Okay, but yeah, Spring Boot give you some convenience. Every class you put under this main application package, you will automatically scan. So you don't have to specify the base package. So if you are under the same package as this Spring Boot application, and he will scan for you. You don't need to specify the base package you will scan, unless you put in a different package from the Spring Boot application. So if you put the same package, then it will scan all the components for you, all Spring Bean for you. So it's a convenience. Okay, so one Spring Bean is here. So configuration. That's finally let's check some important configuration. For all the configuration, you can check in the README here. README. Okay, you can check README here. There's a full configuration here. But there are two configuration I want to mention if someone may use is the first is reload drop change. If you start the Spring Boot and modify a rule, actually by default it doesn't reflect the change even you reload the page. It's a little bit different when you start with another application. So after you modify a rule, actually you need to restart a server. But if you don't want to restart every time, you can specify this in active DEV, Spring Profile active DEV. So, and you just need to rebuild them the server will reload the rule every time. So you don't have to restart every time, restart the server every time, or it will trigger, I think it will trigger restart automatically. So you don't have to manually restart the server. So maybe sometimes can improve your efficiency when developing a rule because you will modify more frequently. And by default, if you start a web um, a Spring Boot with a Maven plugin, like here, like what I did here, Spring with a Maven, uh, then it doesn't stop your breakpoints. So it's very you have problem when you debugging. So there are two ways. Actually, if you are running a job packaging, you can start the Spring Boot application here with Java application, then it will stop here. Okay, so you can see here, you can actually start. There's a main. You can start as a application with debug, and now it will stop your breakpoint. If I set breakpoint here, and I try to visit uh, taste, you can see the breakpoint stop here. Okay, so this is for jar only. If you are running a WA packaging, then you have to there's a little bit more steps. You need to enable the debug mode by adding these kind of um, parameters. So I already made it here. So you can see I need to add this kind of parameter to start in a debug mode. And so I stop minimal var here. And when you start with this kind of parameter, and it doesn't really start the application, you will start here for listening uh, for you to attach a debugger. So you can attach a debugger and then try to visit here. And if I set the breakpoint, it's a minimal var, so I need to set the breakpoint here. For example, I set breakpoint index, so I visit index. Okay, so it will stop here. So So this is the way you can debug your Spring Boot application. Or by default, if you just start with Maven plugin here like this, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop your breakpoint. Okay, so I think this is roughly the topics, all the things I talked today. Uh, is anyone has any questions? You can type in the chat, or you can speak out and by opening your microphone. Uh, oh, someone asked something in the chat. Okay. Uh, yeah. Currently we don't eagerly to upgrade with the Spring Boot starter, but you can, since we just rely on very core features of the Spring Boot starter. So actually, if you want to use a more latest the or more late more the latest Spring Boot starter, you can just override in the Spring Boot override here. I think that's also fine. So for example, minimal jar here. This is minimal jar. So it include this one, Spring Boot Starter Web 3.2.7. So actually we can dependency we can Spring Boot Starter Web, uh, and we can use maybe more, for example, 3.4.2 and override it. Okay, it's downloading. Take some time. 2 point is it exist? Maybe I choose 3.3.2.1. Not sure it exists or not. Okay, this exists. So, Spring Starter Web, Spring Starter Web. It doesn't override it. Uh, okay, I thought it will override it, but it didn't. Okay, so if it didn't, then we need to exclude it. For example, exclude it here. Yeah, I think you can use POM file to exclude this one and include what you want. And I think we will periodically test the compatibility. But since our starter project is just quite small, if you check the source, I'll show you just very small. So it didn't. I think, yeah, you can see just several classes, and it just used very minimal features of rely on very minimal features of Spring Boot Starter. So it's hardly, I think it's very hard to break in a minor version, I think. So maybe we will check after the Spring Boot to the 4 or 5, but I think it won't break if you upgrade to use Spring Starter 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. I think it won't break. So you can just safely exclude it and use your own web, use your own starter version. Okay. Okay. Yeah. If there's any question, if I need to make complex web page, which needs to give accessible both to login users and anonymous users. As far as I understood, opening up before user login would be unsafe. Uh, yeah, it's a trade-off. Yeah, I didn't mean it always it's it will be very unsafe if you open zkAU because ZK already have its own way to protect the zkAU. But it will be surely that will be less safer. So, security. Let's show you how ZK protect. For example, request forgery. Uh, okay. So because every time when ZK fire AJAX request, that's this if there's any. So I would say it depends on how safe you want. I don't mean every time you need to make your application very safe. It depends on how safe you want. So if there's the first suggestion is, yeah, sure, it's better you don't allot ZKAU in your application if you really want to be very safe. So then you don't need to open ZKAU in your login page. And but if there's really a requirement, then you can accept it. Say, okay, you can open a ZKAU in login page. And every time when ZK send a request, you can see you will send a DTID. So you can see this is automatically generated and it will be different every time. So you can see here is the LAOG. But if you reload this page, and here you check it's a different DTID, and the UUID also will be different. The UUID will be this button's ID is also random generated. So these two must be correct because this is record in the server side. So if the desktop ID is fake or is generated by someone else and doesn't exist in the server, the ZK doesn't handle it. It will drop it. Or the UID is incorrect, it's not a match any component at server side, then it will also drop. So this is ZK already have its way to protect the cross-site we call here we call say cross-site request forgery. So someone want to generate a fake ZK request at the client side to your server. We already have our mechanism to protect it. So it's not totally unsafe uh, if you try to allot DKA requests. But just say if you want to be very safe, then we suggest you keep to protect all the channels. So that's why I suggest that if you build your ZK page with rule, then just keep this ZK RES open and keep protected ZK AU because ZK RES is less affected because you only handle the static resource. If someone just break it, it doesn't harm anything because you just can get static resource. But ZKAU is main channels. It will do many things. Fire event listener get some dynamic content through this channel. So you need to evaluate how safe your application you want to be. So I didn't mean, yeah, you have to always block it. So okay, thank you. Uh, Is there any other way to get Spring Bean except Spring? I think Spring itself might have its own way to get Spring Bean. I think, but I didn't check. You mean in API in Java way? I guess Spring has its own way to get a Spring Bean in Java API, but I just don't know. Well, I guess there will be. But in ZK, we provide Spring utility to get beans. So that's if you want other ways, I would say ZK don't provide other way. But I think if you want, maybe Spring will provide its own way to get Spring Bean. So yeah, I'm not sure do I answer your question or not? Uh, Other way, Spring Bean except. Okay, thank you. Thank you for asking questions. Is there any other questions? Yeah. If no, then you can remember there's a documentation about this. You can get all the details if you forgot here for the Spring security or the Spring, there will be all the detail here. You can also access the example project here to get the example project. So if you forgot some details, you can check out the project and see the source code. If there's any problem, you can also file issues here. So we will check and to fix that. Okay, thank you.